even though hearing the news and everything going on here, decided he's coming anyway. So thank you so much for coming. And he's going to say a few words, and then you're going to watch the film, and then Maurice Ben Mayor will sit here with Michael, and they will talk to each other and to Irmin Schmidt, who will be on the screen via Zoom. And so you should all stay put when the film is over. And Michael.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good evening. It's a great pleasure to be here in Israel, and it's a great honor. It's so sad we couldn't make it last year to be here and to have these wonderful festival. I think it's really important to have festivals like Soundtrack Tel Aviv to present films on music, especially on the music that you're not all aware like every day because you don't hear them on the radio. But these films that they present will probably never be shown on Netflix or Amazon or anywhere. So that is your chance to dive into really important culture of the world. I hope that this festival will stay on and that you support this festival for the next years, because we have like 10, 15 film festivals all over the world that present these music films, and it's getting harder and harder for these festivals. So please, one applause for Soundtrack Tel Aviv. I am not a film director, so I never had this aim to be a film director. I produce films, I run a music film festival myself, and it was by chance that I came along these film. I will tell the story after the film, and the whole journey of the film, I think it started in 2016, and now it's 2024, and we're here, and you can see the film. You see how much effort and how many difficulties are in producing and directing a film. And this journey, of course, I will tell you about after the film. I don't have to mention this long time again, because Irmin always feels that it diminishes his fame as a musician of world film, because it took so long to finance this film. But the reality is that music documentaries on any kind of music are hard to finance today. It's not my film. I think it was comparatively easy, and most of the films that are shown here had it much more difficult than my film. So please go on, support all small, nice music documentaries that Soundtrack Tel Aviv presents, and now have fantastic film projection.
Thank you. Yeah, I will start with, okay, so this is Michael. And I am Maurice Ben Mayor, and I'm also a director and an editor. And for some reason they chose me to be here.
Because you're so experienced.
Yeah, so I'm not really experienced in interviewing people. So if I will be a little bit lame, excuse me for that.
Sag mal was, können ihr uns?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Irmin.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. It's a great honor to have you with us. Wow.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you. I'm Maurice, and you probably know Michael already. And
Hi.
It's an excellent film, and since time is quite short, so we start?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to share my first experience of listening to Cannes music, and later on we will talk about other things. I was 18 at the time. It was 1984, and in Tel Aviv. And Cannes wasn't very well known back then. I think that maybe not more than 200 people knew this band in Israel at that time. And there was a mythical record shop called Faz in Tel Aviv, and the legendary owner of the shop recommended this album to me when I was 18. He handed me Tagomago, and he gave me the album, and he told me, I think you're ripe for this already. And so I wanted to impress him, and I bought this overpriced record because it was in an imported copy from, I think it was a British copy, double LP, beautiful cover. I bought it, and I went home, and I was terribly disappointed.
Sorry
Yeah,
for that.
yeah, I put it on a turntable and I couldn't understand it. It was so alien. It was so different. I didn't have any tools to understand it back then. What I felt is that it's really an extraterrestrial music. It had no real structures that I could relate to. Although I already listened to lots of progressive rock groups and many and other stuff, and I felt like I'm ready for it, but I wasn't at all. It sounded like a total cacophonia for me, and if I could describe it now in retrospect, it was like listening to the Velvet Underground on steroids. And I couldn't understand it. I didn't have the tools. And later on, a friend of mine bought with his money the overpriced record of Egbamiasi, which was a bit rounder in its sound and a bit more comprehensible. And I started listening to that, and then I said, wow, there is something in this band after all. And I went back listening to Tagomago, and then I got hooked on it. And this is my personal story. But from then on, what happened with me was that I joined this journey of Cannes music and of your music in general, and I understood nowadays I can say that, and after watching this film for the second time today, I can point on one strong feeling I've got, which is sincerity, and I mean the sincerity in music and in your intention. All of you guys, and you especially, is something that is missing. I feel that is missing today. I feel that we live in times of stagnation in culture, and that we always repeat things that were already has been done, and I can quote one thing you said in Neuklang, the book that was written about krautrock, that you said that you meant to start from zero when you when you started with Cannes. And I feel like it's many ideas that I'm throwing now, but if I can, I will try to put it in other words. I played on Spotify. I put Cannes today on Spotify, and there's this feature in Spotify that brings you to the radio of the band, you know, like listen to Cannes radio, which brings you all different kinds of music which are related to Cannes. And and it was so eclectic and so crazy. You couldn't put a finger on it, and I felt like there is something which the algorithm was all mixed up, and I told myself, well, we really live in dumb period of time, and wow.
I don't hear Michael.
You don't hear me?
I didn't say anything. I just said,
I heard you.
understand here.
I thought you said something. Yeah, I hear you very well.
No, I'm really a little bit moved from the.
Well, then I just use the time. My first really impression of Can was that they were heroes. I knew them from the radio somehow because they were played on the radio. And the first thing that I really noticed was a song that Irmin has made for Tatort. And that was the first time I dared to call the radio station to ask what kind of music it was. And then I understood that was by Irmin Schmidt. It was a song, and that was the first, and by the way, the only record that I ever bought of Can. And I still have it. And but at this time, I was raised on a lot of new music, on classical music, a little bit of film music, a little bit of musical, lots of opera, not so much pop music. And but Can belong to this canon of music that you were allowed to listen to, even when I was a child. I'm born 65, so the music was on the radio, the music was in the films, the music was on TV, and they were already heroes. But they were the heroes at some point of yesterday, and at some point later, I understood that Irmin was fascinating film composer, and in my opinion, later I had to also to correct this. He was so much more interesting as a film composer as a pop musician at this time. Of course, well, I was naive somehow, but that made me to listen to his music, to find his films. And I think in 2009, that was the first time we met, Irmin and I, because at my Soundtrack Cologne festival, I was able to give Irmin the award for his lifetime. So it was called Honorary Award for the film music that he'd done. And there was also, we had a big group of people and we discussed who was the next person who was really the eligible person to get this award. And everyone said, Irmin needs to get this award. And so we were very, very happy that he was coming. And then it turns out he was quite a nice guy and he was very interested in our festival. And he got to know Gregor Schwellenbach that you met in the film. Gregor, I think Irmin was a couple of years later, he was on one of our juries. And in honor of our guest, Irmin, we had Gregor arrange a couple of songs from Irmin for, or it's partly also film music, for string quartet with piano. And Irmin was first shocked, but then he liked it so much, and both of them became friends and started to work together. And of course, that also improved my relationship to Irmin. And I guess, yeah.
The funny thing was that I heard what they played, the string quartet, and I thought, that's really, they imitate my music. They steal my something. I didn't realize in the first moment they played my music. They had arranged it for string quartet. I thought, no, they just it's just stealing my things, and that was very funny.
We didn't tell him before, so it was
Yeah, I
a
was.
surprise for him, and it worked very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Hildegard, of course, she's so cool. She kept in touch, and at some point, I went to the Braunschweig Film Festival as well, and then Hildegard called and said, "Oh, should we meet somehow? When are you in France somewhere?" And I think we met at Aubagne, and I guess it was 2016. And we discussed a retrospective of Irmin that you see in the film. In 2018, it really then happened. And when we had finished most of the discussion, we were eating and something, and suddenly Hildegard said, "Michael, don't you want to do a film on Irmin too?" And I said, "A film? Well, yes, I can do a film, but I'm a producer, not a director." And she says, "Oh, doesn't matter. You can do this." And I wasn't sure if I should do this because I know that every documentary is a really long journey. And then Hildegard bribed me because she sent me a hard disk with, I don't know, hundreds of gigabytes of all the stuff she had kept, all the VHS snippets from television, first WDR screenings, recordings. And so I had to watch this and all the photos that were on it. And it was amazing. Plus the material that Hildegard shot herself and Sandra, the daughter. And I had all this material there. And I said, okay, I have to do this film. So I became a director. Now you might ask, why did Hildegard choose me? And it took me also a while to understand this. And this guy has done 120 films. I think something about 40 records. He's done operas, ballet. It's amazing. So usually you're in the situation, if you do a film, that you have problems finding enough material. Here it's totally opposite. You have too much material. Much too much material. And I guess she understood because I was also curating festivals, curating retrospective for Irmin, that I was be able to take stuff and leave stuff and be unfriendly enough. I don't know the right word, but it's too selective maybe, or daring to take 70 years of this life that is so full, so amazingly full, and take some little snippets, some little films, some little music, and say this is his life, to make a representation of his life. And of course, that was a big trust. On the other hand, it's not that easy. It's a lot of pressure. Do a film on Irmin Schmidt. You know, everyone says later, you forgot this, you forgot this, you forgot this. And you know this in advance. You cannot cope with this kind of work to do a film on Irmin Schmidt. It needs to be a TV series, 120 hours. Then it would be probably correct to give a good impression.
And what is the formula of how much time you give to the music itself? You know, because people actually talk about music and then you don't actually hear the music for a new audience. Or how do you cope with that? Because I'm always trying to cope with the same question when I'm making films, you know, about music.
Well, I think it was quite easy because there were already films on Irmin. And I thought, okay, what is for me most interesting and was what has not been touched by other films. So that was the film music and all the part what he did later in his life. Everyone was focusing on his 10 years of Cannes, not the time before that was very rich, not the time after. And I was not an expert, but at least I had some clue on his film music. And I found all the stories that I had read, that he had told, I found them so interesting. So I started with the film music. That was the first chapter that we did. And when I was happy with this chapter, we moved to the opera, because I thought that is also something that is very near to his heart. So the opera has to be also a big part. And then the rest of the life. And then the early times. And the last thing that we did with the rest of the time for the 90 minutes was the Cannes chapter. And I think it fits quite well 10 years, 70 years of activity that we had not much left. We were forced to do this in a very dense way, and we were not. It was not necessary to repeat everything that the others had done already. So that was my approach. It's one approach. Someone else, next generation, can do another film on Cannes, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's enough material left for
Irmin.
that.
When I read in Neuklang, you saying about Cannes music that you wanted to start from zero. I already began that before and I was stuck. It reminded me of the Dada movement, the Dada art movement, which began just after the World War I. And then there was World War II, and you are a child of World War II. And what I thought, and it's only my own theory, is that each of these world wars brought a whole new approach to culture and arts, and which shook the world in many ways, in all different aspects of arts. Do we need another world war in order to
Oh my God, no.
Steer up
Please
the world?
No, what?
I'm not for it. I'm not for it, but you know, history.
Really horrifying theory. No, we don't need. We rather should try everything to avoid it. But while saying trying from zero, no artist ever starts from zero. You always have a tradition behind you, and especially me, who was actually educated with classical music and started as a classical conductor and pianist and composer. So there is this long tradition on which you build. But Germany, of course, after the war, was so devastated. The culture was devastated, and the consciousness of creativity, everything was in ruins. So that's one thing where we had to start from zero after culture was erased, was destroyed. And that's 1-0. And the other zero was a kind of personal thing. Being brought up with a lot of different music and influences, you have to throw it first away to start with a new thing. And starting with a new thing is a very European Western tradition. Since the 14th century, it was always the intent of artists to create something new. And starting from zero is nothing especially 20th century. Think of musica nova in the 13th and 14th century, Machaut, the Gothic church muse. That was something new, and it was done with the intent of creating something new, and that went through the centuries. So all these aspects, the starting in a destroyed culture, and anyway picking up the intent of all of our culture and tradition came together. So it's not only starting at zero.
Yes, but relating to more popular approach to music, you were a rock band,
Yeah,
seemingly a rock band. Like you had guitars and a bass guitar and drums and keyboards and a frontman and everything that a rock band should have. But on the other hand, you didn't play rock music at all.
right, because when we started, it was not even the intent to be anything. I mean, to be rock or whatever. I just wanted to found a group of a few people, which everybody came from another tradition, like me from the classical and from the contemporary classical music, like Stockhausen, Boulez, and so on, and with whom I studied, and Ligeti, and Jackie, the drummer, had all his life done jazz music, and that was the intent. I didn't want to be a composer using components, parts, elements of all these new musics of the 20th century, because jazz is a new music, like Stockhausen is a new music, and I wanted to bring that together, and not like a composer using jazz elements in a symphonic work, but bringing it together with persons, with musicians, and then find out what happens. We had no intent to become whatever that became, but it just happened to us that we became a kind of rock band. But when you listen to Tago Mago, I mean, it's something. It's something else. It's
Completely. What? But still, you didn't have. It seems like you didn't have any relationship with what went on at that time in popular music at all. You didn't have any communication with, I mean, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones,
no, the
Pink Floyd,
Beatles.
whatever.
Well, of course,
You had no
I had.
conversation with this thing. You don't.
No, I heard a lot, and I was a big fan of Jimi Hendrix at that time. Or fan, I was very in. For instance, his guitar playing on the Woodstock when he played the American anthem. That was for me a piece of new music, even if it was played. That was really 20th century music for me, like Stockhausen or Ligeti, equally. And so,
may I throw in?
Because for me, it felt like you rejected any conversation with traditions of rock, like blues traditions, even jazz.
Yeah, blues, of course not, because I mean, I'm not born in Memphis. I'm born in Berlin, and we did the meaning from zero was at that time, since there was no all tradition was destroyed. I wanted to do a music which genuinely could only be done in this cultural environment of the late 60s, beginning 70s in Cologne, in Germany, on this spot. And
there is a very German unique thing in it. It couldn't happen elsewhere.
It's not in German. It is German because I was in Germany and I am a German. So what we did was something well, a presence of mind of this moment. So that was not, we couldn't build on pop or popular music tradition because it didn't exist. And in Germany at that time, pop music or rock music meant to play music like the English, or like Pretty Things or Rolling Stones, or imitate the Americans. So when we started, everybody thought they can't play the music because we didn't sound like the English or the other bands. But this was the intent. We wanted to define the moment of the time, this moment in Germany. And yeah, just
So
happened.
for me, if I may step in, I would even say that of the last century, there's this time before Cannes and the time after Cannes. Before Cannes, there was this kind of analytical time. Everything was explored. There was the music of improvisation, jazz, partly going to new music. There was new music was exploring music without rhythm, all kinds of sounds, electronic stuff, and so on. You had all the classical music existing. You had the pop music tradition, the rock music tradition, the blues music tradition. Irmin was listening at this time to a lot of world music. He had a huge collection of records, I guess, also from India, and all the musical traditions were there. And also the influence of Stockhausen, Ligeti, Cage, the sounds that the not existence of music with Cage and everything. And I think Irmin was the first to see that there is all these possibilities. And instead of taking a part from this and take a part of this on this, he did the first synthesis. He used everything that was existing. And it was, in my opinion, it's the first real postmodern music that existed in the world. So
For me too.
There's the pre-modern music that's before Irmin, and the postmodern music that started with Irmin. And therefore, he's, in my opinion, much more important than Kraftwerk or anyone, because also Kraftwerk was only analytical. They explored the electronic beats, but they did everything, and they did something really new. And I think it was easy to do this in Germany because we didn't have this tradition of successful music outside classical music. So there was a big hole in the culture, like you told it, the zero, and you were able to fill it.
I have another idea of why it happened in Germany, simply because of the fact that it was Germany, post-war Germany. It's not many years after the war. We're talking about the 60s. It's not many years after the war, and Germany is a secluded nation, rebuilding itself in a way, and with its back to the Western world. In any aspect you can look at it, musically, artistically, yeah, you were somewhat confined in your own ex-territory, and you had to find your own new voice. Am I right? It's
Absolutely.
I'm in the right direction.
Yeah, right.
And that's also the reason why that Irmin's music in a way became most popular through films, because the film industry is usually the first to find trends, to understand what is really happening in the world, which kind of music will touch the people in the future.
Yeah, and this is another thing I wanted to ask about this flirting with films, with music for films, because your first Cannes' first album is Monster Movie, and then I think it was the third album, it's soundtracks, and even in the title names of the albums, and then later on your collaboration and music for films you wrote and it seems like you had this preconception of writing for films, even if they weren't made at all, imaginary films. Like, I wanted to hear something from you about your approach to soundtrack, even if there isn't a film behind this soundtrack.
Well, yeah, maybe, but I don't imagine any kind of story when I'm making music behind the music, or it's yeah, it's always only music. But I think that's why it works so specially in some, not in generally in film, but for some films, because it tells its own story. It doesn't illustrate, and it's something on its own. Yeah.
An own layer.
And I never imagine any kind of visual or literary behind when I'm composing music.
But still, you're very good describing it in words. In the beginning of the movie, when you describe the scene of the sounds, of your childhood sounds.
Yes. That's
so you do have these images in your head. I mean, they somehow leak inside your music.
Yeah, it's just the sounds, which the environment, the sound environment, which is always there. What I hear, whatever it might be, it can be trains or yeah, the sound of the wind in trees or water or whatever. Every sound which or machines, if you are surrounded by sounds from artificial sounds and natural sounds, and that is what the basis of my music, the sounds which surround around me, which I hear and transform them into music. It's not so much imagination of any kind of story, of any kind of it's the pure essence of sounds which are around me.
So we talked about a little bit about film music. What can you tell me about your work with Wenders?
Well, the wonderful thing to work with Wim is, of course, you look at the film, you discuss with the filmmaker the film, and you look at it 100 times and then have an idea and discuss it, every scene. And in the end, I told Wim what I imagine as a sound, as an idea. And he said, well, just do it. I mean, he gives you the absolute freedom once you had found together a basis how to work together. Then he lets you do. He doesn't interfere. He didn't at any time interfere during the making of the music. And when I had done it, he came to the studio and we looked at it, and there were no big discussions about anything. It was just that he said, well, why don't you make a little bit more of this here and a little less there? but it's the absolute trust that once you put a fundament to your work, he lets you do, and this works wonderfully.
I have a final question for now. At least we here in Israel right now, we live in troubled times.
Yeah.
From your life experience and from your story, your own story, what do you think is the power of art to change things, to change life?
I don't know.
It's a very general and stupid question, I know, but
I mean, only 10 or 20 years ago, I have thought about that much more optimistic. In the moment, I don't, especially thinking about Israel. I don't believe that the power of art can help to see what's happening in the world in the moment very much. I'm not very optimistic about that. It doesn't mean I'm totally desperate about future, but you asked me what art can do in these times, and I'm not very optimistic about that.
But you were at the time when you just began.
Well, yeah, I had a certain hope, let's say, but a lot of people always said that there is a certain kind of melancholy or whatever in all of my music, which meant there is a certain of, I don't know the right word in English, of Trauer. Michael, do you know?
Sorrow.
Trauer.
Sorrow.
So, yeah, no, it's not sorrow. It's mourning.
Mourning? Mourning?
Mourning, yeah, maybe that.
Mourning.
If somebody dies.
Yeah, it's mourning.
Mourning. And there is a certain mourning about what happened. And you can't mourn about the future, because mourning means about something which happened. But there is something like this in all music I've done. And I'm sort of forth and back between hope and
despair.
Yeah, and the opposite of that.
Yeah.
I guess every music that touches has always the looking back and looking to the future in the same moment, and that makes it strong. If it has only one aspect or the other aspect, it won't work. So that's why this music is so strong, because it has history and future in it. And so hope is also included, but also the opposite.
Okay, so at least we have your music to be comforted by wherever we're going to.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
It would be the greatest, the most wonderful thing for me if somebody would say, it helped me. It helped me to overcome a crisis or something bad, or something terrible, which answers in a way your question.
It certainly helps me. If it comforts you, it certainly helps me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irmin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your music and everything.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I would
We
have
are
left.
also sorry.
Yeah, but my doctor said I'm not allowed in the moment to travel, especially to fly.
It's not only your doctor. I think it's not the best of times to come over here.
Yeah, but
I feel safe.
Thank you, Irmin.
thank you very much.
Goodbye.